This is huge news for Facebook or Meta shareholders, where earlier today, Senator Marco Rubio announced bipartisan legislation to ban China's TikTok app. Now, this isn't the first time I've talked about this. I've actually brought this up several times on my channel over the last several months. If this is your first time tuning in, my name is Daniel. You're watching Unrivaled Investing. If you enjoy educational investment videos, please make a point of hitting that subscribe button. So in this video, we're going to talk about the prospects that TikTok gets banned from the United States. What can that mean for Meta shareholders or Facebook shareholders, and why TikTok could potentially get banned, why I think it's likely to happen. So first of all, this has been a long time coming, where you see FCC Commissioner Brendan Carr, FCC stands for Federal Communications Commission, effectively calling out TikTok as a tool, a spy tool for the Chinese Communist Party. Now, those are real strong fighting words, saying, hey, no matter what, no matter how many times they spin it, saying, yeah, the data is not going to China. There are perpetual leaks that say, oh, yeah, it actually does go. And if the CCP wants to review any of the data or effectively build cases on individual Americans in the United States that can compromise them in the future, let's say they want to run for office, that is a big freaking deal. So if he's calling it a spy tool and calling out these concerns, I think it's very appropriate to see bipartisan legislation. Now, it's not just that. It's not just the sort of put on the tinfoil hat conspiracy theory, concerns. I think, maybe you're going to need an extra dose of aluminum on this one, where there have been some allegations, and I definitely can see it, that so once again, it's a Chinese company, ByteDance, that has Douyin in China, but they have TikTok in the US. And I've seen and heard different stories that suggest that the one in China is a little bit more about like eating your vegetables and fruits, and the one in the US is more like, hey, here's some sugar. Now, I'm not sure that may not be a perfect analogy. I don't have a lot of exposure to Douyin, the Chinese TikTok version, but the key aspect is that if it's largely unregulated in the US, you can have themes that are really disturbing. Just yesterday there was an article from Bloomberg talking about how, one of the TikTok promoters, she has 7 million followers. She's underage. Really, it comes across as coming from a highly dysfunctional family, potentially. It looks very problematic, doing, promiscuous dances for a 15-year-old. And you're like, oh God, like really, you don't want that to be amplified. But would that happen, let's say, in China, or would the CCP say, like, squash this, saying, hey, we do not want to amplify, certain pervy trends, or we don't want to amplify certain, we want to appeal to our better nature. And that's the question of like, well, is the algorithm being tweaked to sow destruction, to sow division in the US versus, let's say, China? And that is, I don't have a clear answer if that algorithm is exactly the same. I don't think it is. Clearly, it's very different apps. Douyin encourages more e-commerce. TikTok is more this, social media, watching these videos. But clearly, the goal is to get more, e-commerce over time. But I looked at this as very problematic. I mean, at the end of the day, you do not want to have a foreign party that can put videos in front of you, and you may not even realize, if you're a TikTok user, like, hey, these videos are being put in front of me to encourage possible radical voting policies in the US, or who I might want to vote for. And that creates just real problems when you're thinking, oh man, you can have this foreign influence. So wait, maybe you might say, Daniel, the tinfoil hat needs to go away. Either way, applying this thinking about, Meta or what happens to Facebook stock. I mean, look, TikTok has millions and millions of users in the US, super fast growing app. A lot of these users are spending, 1 to 2 hours a day on that app. And so if you see it banned, what you're going to see is that over time, it means it's banned from the app stores. And so that growth really slows down significantly. So this will take time, where, slowly but surely new phones won't be able to get it, or it'll be very hard to download TikTok on new phones. And that means that user base would say, hey, I'm looking for something else to do. And so a lot of different people have theories like, oh, maybe that means they'll go to YouTube, or maybe that means they'll go to Facebook's Reels, which has been their targeted solution to attack TikTok. And in full disclosure, folks, I own Facebook stock. I also own Google stock, which owns YouTube. And so that's part of my investment portfolio. And I call out my portfolio to members of unrivaledinvesting.com. And so I look at this and I'm thinking, this could be a boon. This could be helpful to Meta over time, as effectively the younger demographics say, hey, you know what? This is no longer an option that's available to me. Is Reels good enough? Now, clearly, Zuckerberg said he missed a giant shift in social networking. He said that over the last few months, and he's called TikTok as a very effective competitor. Effectively, over the last year, he's called out, yeah, we even potentially lost some market share to them, where people said, hey, if 2 years ago you were only spending, half hour on TikTok, and now you have a lot more people spending an hour to an hour and a half, that's a lot of people that aren't seeing your ads on, let's say, the Facebook Blue app, or you're talking about, Reels or Instagram or WhatsApp. And so in that situation, if you get more eyeballs in front of your apps, you're going to be generating more ad impressions and ultimately more revenue for a business like Facebook. So there is a direct benefit. This isn't just a peripheral. It's as long as users are going to be using an app. I personally, would rather go for a walk outside, get a hike in, get some fresh air. But hey, a lot of people, it's easier just to pull up that phone and go, doom scrolling or just, looking at what's going on. And so, see what the latest dance trend is. And so, this would be a direct benefit for Zuckerberg in terms of catching up on this competitive threat with, the short form videos in terms of rapidly growing. And so I do view this as a likely outcome where you see Zuckerberg's Meta benefits. So the question is, what happens to Meta stock from here? First, if you're looking to take charge of your investment journey, consider unrivaledinvesting.com for compelling investment ideas, real-time portfolio updates, and our exclusive Discord server available for annual subscribers. I also recently launched 2 new investment courses for enterprising investors looking to learn more about financial statements and valuation analysis. In full disclosure, this is not financial advice, and I do own stock in Meta. So I think, thinking about Zuckerberg, I think a lot of folks have lost sight that, a lot of folks like to describe him sort of as an alien, and you see pictures, goofing off like he's not really human and things like that. I think he's just ruthless. And so I think he tried to play the game the right way, where he was like, hey, I'm going to go jogging in this really nasty air in China to encourage, the Chinese government to say like, oh yeah, you should allow my apps in China. And I'll, with the quid pro quo that, hey, I'll do what it takes to make sure it works. I'll do whatever sort of, censorship that's required to make these apps work. Ultimately, China didn't approve. So he's just playing the game. He's a ruthless guy. So you could see over several years, he made, thousands of dollars in contributions to Marco Rubio, who, by the way, he's taking point on this legislation. I'm sure he's made more indirectly through various different PACs to various different congressmen, that encourages this legislation. So I view him as a ruthless competitor playing the game. He tried to do it their way. Now he's doing it the U.S. way. And looking at, not only playing the game from a political way, he's also playing it from a product consumer way of saying, hey, if I can't win on a sort of paying off the politician's perspective, you know what, I also want to do a quick copy of TikTok. And so Reels has been, a fast sort of copycat type of clone, growing very quickly, where they can leverage their existing size, where they have several billion people on the platform. So they're saying, yeah, that they've seen about a 50% increase in terms of Reels being played across Facebook and Instagram. And they're saying, yeah, this is from their most recent call. They're talking about its incremental time being spent, so it's not cannibalizing their existing usage. And they're talking about how they're gaining share relative to competitors like TikTok. So this is a big data point saying, hey, Zuckerberg's ruthless. He's going to do whatever it takes to win, one of which is, paying off politicians. Another way is trying to, fast clone. Where do I think Meta stock goes from here? Because it has rallied a bit, currently around $119, $120 a share. We are expecting their revenue to effectively be flat or slightly down this year. Partly this is due to inflation, partly due to, Apple changes with privacy. Longer term, if you do indeed see a ban on TikTok, and longer term, you expect the economy to grow, I would expect Meta to continue growing. Particularly, this is a focus just on their family of apps, really their advertising business. I would expect them to resume their growth, especially if Reels is additive to their business. And so I'm penciling out what I think and could be potentially conservative. It's tough to say when you're going from 36% growth last year to flat this year. And I think this is also a really important point about psychology is if you go from 36% growth last year to flat or slightly down this year to maybe, somewhere between 5 and 10% growth next year, that can change everyone's outlook. That can cause a reset in psychology. So I think a big deal will be seeing what first quarter, second quarter numbers look like, because if you're starting to see growth and sort of maybe a change in trend, folks might say, oh man, this is now it gets revalued, because right now you look at the business and it's currently being valued. If you focus just on their family of apps, just their advertising business, not their money, huge bet, $10 billion bet on Reality Labs, that's only around 7 to 9 times earnings, which is super cheap for arguably a well-ingrained social media app that, by the way, it's clear that U.S. Congress is going to say, and possibly broader Western nations will see, might side with Facebook saying, hey, we'd rather have this known evil versus the unknown evil. And so, we'll see how that sort of plays out. It's very possible that Congress ultimately becomes a good friend here, enabling them to limit competition in a sense. We'll see. And so looking at that, thinking about you could have this psychological change to the benefit if growth, let's say, picks up next year. We'll see. It's very possible it doesn't if you have a recession. But thinking about over the next 5 years, if you're able to get single-digit growth, if you're able to have a psychological change from, let's say, 8 times multiple to 15 times, which I think could happen if you start seeing this grow again, and if you start seeing these profit margins that they've historically delivered on, then you're looking at a business that arguably is multiples higher. I'm assuming somewhere between 100 and 300% higher from here, plus the fact that management, if they manage their cash flows correctly, which we'll see if they will, the most recent quarter was a bit disappointing, but if they will, they can buy back a lot of free cash flow each year. I'm giving it a discount to what is their actual free cash flow potential here. I'm saying maybe they can buy back effectively 3 to 5% of their stock each year. It could be a lot more depending on how they manage their cash flows. So I look at this and I think there's a lot of potential for Metastock. There's a reason why I own it with my personal portfolio. I will call out to my subscribers at unrivaledinvesting.com if I decide to make it more my portfolio, make it less, and I'll share, what do I think is more compelling, once again, at unrivaledinvesting.com. If you enjoyed this video, sort of saying bye-bye to TikTok, we'll see if it happens. Please make a point of hitting that thumbs up, hit that subscribe button. Thanks so much for tuning in.